Aloha and welcome to Soul Evolution. I'm Cindy Paulos here interviewing a wonderful spiritual visionary pioneer who's been doing work in the field of consciousness for 30 years, Carolyn Cobelo. And you have 6 books. You've authored 2 award-winning films. You're a channel with beloved guides Mother Mary and Zarathustra. You've been doing work with Haleakala. And you do beautiful workshops in sacred spaces. You've traveled the world to some of the wonderful spiritual spaces, and you'll be doing some classes in spiritual spaces here on Maui. Welcome. It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, too.
What got you started in the metaphysical, spiritual field?
I think, well, I met a man, a Hindu guru, Muktananda, in 1978. And I met him in a big hall with lots of people, and he touched me on the head with peacock feathers. And I looked up, and the only thing I could see was red-orange light. I couldn't see him, myself, anybody around, and I thought, wow, what is this? So that was the beginning.
I could feel that.
Can you?
Yeah,
really?
No, I could really feel that. That's how wonderful.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing.
And this particular field led you, and I guess really it feels like a flood of spiritual consciousness and creative energy must have come to you, because 6 books, that's a lot of spirit flowing through you.
It is.
Well, tell us a little bit about the evolution of the books and how those came into being.
Well, they came into being, actually, it was all really centered around sacred space. I was in Argentina. Well, first I was in Rome, and I was in Rome in the late 80s with my daughter, and we were in the Colosseum. And all of a sudden I felt really sad and scared, and I had this vision of, I don't know if it was my past life or another past life, in the Colosseum. I was a woman yelling to a guy who was about to go out into the ring. And I was just flooded with pain and sadness. And then I asked, just sitting in these bleachers, well, how can I know this? How do I tune into this? What is it? And I saw this image of crystalline forms, little crystalline forms, holding energy like computer chips. And the stones in the Colosseum were holding the memories. That's what I saw, what I felt. And so again, I said, what's this? And then I was in Argentina, and I was at a waterfall, and I was sad and lonely and felt kind of abandoned. And so I asked for help at the waterfall with people standing around me, and I felt this cloud of energy just come over me like a big mother's arms. What's this? How does this work? And then I was in Argentina too, driving by a big stone formation that just looked like any other stone mountain. It was a small mountain, and I started to cry, and I felt I had come home. I had no idea what this was. So I found out later that it was a sacred place for the Mapuche Indians, and they called it Thunderhead. And occasionally it just made these strange sounds. So somehow I was connected there. I'm not sure how.
So did you know anything about being a spiritual empath at that time, or this was all new to you?
Well, no, actually not a spiritual empath, but more I was a Gestalt therapist, psychotherapist, learned channeling, learned healing, all in the 80s. The Gestalt was in the 70s. So I grew into sensitivity, I guess you could say. Emotional sensitivity, spiritual sensitivity. And then I met Muktananda in the late 70s, and that was just opened me up. And then I found that if I put my hand on someone's shoulder, and I was working at a chronic pain clinic, they would start seeing lights. I was practicing hypnosis. I thought, oh, they're seeing lights. What does that mean? So then I, of course, was seeing lights a lot with Muktananda. So it's like all these things happen to me, and then I wonder what they are, and I explore, try to move on and see what's this.
So you are a healer, and you've worked with that energy, which really all comes from the same place, doesn't it?
It does, very much so.
How do you tune into that place to decide where to direct your own energy? Because it sounds like you're able to tune in pretty clearly to different energies around different places.
I am. It's where I'm attracted, where I'm drawn. I just am a transmitter of energy and let that energy go where it wants to. I find that works a lot better than trying to control it. And the same in experiencing a sacred place. You let yourself just be there and open up and receive what is being offered. The tricky part, and this is where the psychological part comes in, is all that we transfer onto, we project onto guides or powers, spirits, the same way we project onto other people, like in psychology. So we might, if we've had an abusive childhood, we might imagine that this mountain is going to hurt us if we tune in. But if we have healed and we're conscious of those wounds, sometimes we don't heal them all, but we know enough and we healed enough so that we're going to not think that mountain is going to hurt us. We'll be open to receiving what it has to offer.
Don't you sense that this is really, that one point is so important for the world consciousness and for humanity to be healed enough where we don't project this negative energy on each other, and I think what you just said could be a really important key to where we need to evolve to be able to bring in all the light that can be present. It seems like we have an amazing ability if we can tune into that light you're talking about,
Totally.
but at the same time it can be used and reflected in lots of different ways. So have you ever worked with how that can be used by people, getting beyond the problems and deflections or personality problems to bring it into a clear channel?
Yes, I've worked many ways with that, and as I evolve, my methods of working evolve. But I think now the power of sacred space, which is essentially a natural resource we have, if you look at the energy of the earth, it's formed in lines. Like we have meridians, the earth has lines, and some of those lines cross, and at those crossroads, that's where the power is, the most power. So if we're in a place like Mount Haleakala, which is one of the most powerful places on earth, and I'm so grateful to be here, and especially if you have a guide at first, at least, it helps, because most people really don't know, just like a lot of healing methods and a lot of spiritual paths, we need guides to help us get there, and then we can go on our own, just like Pathfinder, I guess you could say. And so in sacred space, because it opens up our energy system so naturally, not all, but at different points in our evolution, those wounds will open and heal. And what I found primarily, it's similar to laying on of hands, but sacred space has a different element, and perhaps even more powerful, is those wounds just float out. They just disappear. Because that healing force, that natural healing energy force that activates our energy system, just goes in there and purifies us. Now sometimes, just like in healing or spiritual path, sometimes it happens faster than people want, or it happens differently than they expect. So they're like, oh my God, what is this? You know, what? You know, what am I seeing, or what am I feeling, or what am I thinking, or how do I feel in my body? And so having someone, or an energy of some sort to guide you is very helpful.
Where does meditation play a role in all of what you're talking about?
That's a good question. I think meditation is key. Because it actually is a vehicle that we can go inside and become conscious of those. Both all the inspiration we get, all the visions, the ideas, the prophecies, and the wounds. And the more we heal our wounds, the more we open up to spiritual consciousness.
So you do a lot of work with people, going to sacred spaces, and you do a lot of one-on-ones and teaching. When you begin to teach someone about meditation, what do you think some of the key aspects that they need to be open to receive about meditation are?
Well, again, I've evolved into a different place now. I think a mantra is very helpful. My first mantra was from Muktananda, and it was Om Namah Shivaya, or Hamsa. Those are old, ancient Hindu chants. And they have a vibration that just naturally takes you inside. Now I'm channeling something I call the language of light. And I first heard that on the pyramid, Great Pyramid in Uxmal in the Yucatan. And I was channeling through a tape recorder. And then writing one of the books, the one about Mary, is called The Spring of Hope, and those are recordings of the channelings that I made in many of the sacred places. Well, I was making one there on top of the pyramid, and all of a sudden I heard these chants come, and I said, okay, let's hear what the chants are. And I was chanting all different ones for different things, healing different things, for raising consciousness, and I recorded them, and then I lost the recording.
Oh my gosh.
But they came back.
Really?
They've come back recently quite strongly, and one of the...
Not the recordings, but the energy.
The energy, and I think it's probably the same thing, I hope, I don't know. But it sounds very similar, and there's one mantra that that seems to be very powerful for people, and it's a chant. Should I chant it a little bit? Okay. It means I am one or we are one. And this is a tonal language, it's non-linear. I ask what it means, it really isn't a mental concept. It's an experience that takes us into oneness. So it goes like this. Una hina hi ho, una hina hi ho, una hina hi ho. And if you chant that to yourself or out loud, just briefly.
Could you feel the energy shift?
Could you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't know a lot about it, but I know that it is really has a vibration.
I think the soul is so powerful, and I love the term soul evolution, which is the title of one of your books. And I think the soul is an amazing resource which can do so much for us, but I know how I understand the concept of how we as personalities learn lessons and evolve. And sometimes through lessons we've learned with karma, but we seem to always be evolving. How does the soul evolve?
Well, it's a good question. The way I see it is the soul is, well, one way of seeing it, which is, I saw it first when my little niece died. It's a bright, very tiny, bright light, primarily blue, but multicolored. And it leaves the body when we die, and it enters it's light, and enters when we conceive. So that little tiny light has a blueprint in it. And it has all the experience that we've had, and even, I think, imprints of the future. And it comes into our energy system. And so that is, in one sense, it's just pure light, pure love. In another sense, it's got all different colors, all different experiences, basically. So when it enters into ourselves, it has a karmic program, blueprint, and these are lessons that we are meant to learn. And so we will go through those experiences, and that soul is then influenced. I think of it as like colored, because I see it in colors, but influenced by our experiences. And so it, in a sense, is pure, but there's like a coating on it that needs to go through these changes through lifetimes.